So I was just doing some digging on Ticker Terminal, as one does periodically, to take a look at some of the super investor portfolios. I typically like to do this because some of these super investors have international holdings and they might update their portfolios on different dates that are not the same as what the SEC requires for them to report their new holdings. Of course, I ended up looking at Mohnish Pabrai's portfolio, and one of the changes he made about a month ago was a sell-off in some of his position in Shinoken, which is a Japanese company that he thinks could be a spawner and a long-term compounder. But the sell-off wasn't what I found most interesting. It's actually something I found after doing a little digging that I wanted to share today. So let's hop on over to Ticker and take a look. Okay, so here we're on the page of the Pabrai Investment Funds Ticker page that tracks all of, well, most of its positions in the US and internationally. And here we see the Shinoken Group position. And as I mentioned before, there's about a 15% sale on September 15th. Of course, we're not absolutely sure what the reason for the sale is, but like I said, this isn't the most interesting thing. I was curious about the ownership of Shinoken after looking at the 15% because I know he has, it says about 7 or 6.5% of the total shares outstanding for this company. So I wanted to take a further look. So we can come over here to the Shinoken page, and luckily they have a nice little ownership tab on Ticker. And as I suspected, the number one investor is Shinohara Hideaki, which is the founder of this company. This is likely one of the reasons that Pabrai found this company so intriguing, is because it's still led by its founder, and the founder is heavily invested in this company. Shinohara owns about 19% of the total company. Needless to say, he's still very incentivized to continue to run a rock-solid business. Next, we see the Pabrai Investment Funds listed here. This is, again, about a 6.5% ownership, and they had a recent sale. And as we continue to go down, looks like there are a few Japanese companies or holding companies. And then a few levels down the list, we see this interesting tidbit, which is Dhandho Funds LLC. If you've studied Mohnish Pabrai or perhaps read his book, The Dhandho Investor, then this fund name should stick out to you. Dhandho Funds is owned by Mohnish Pabrai, believe it or not. And the interesting thing about this is, according to Ticker, they have purchased about 1.3% of all the shares outstanding for Shinoken. This is 100% of what appears to be the equity portfolio for Dhandho Funds LLC. So it doesn't look like it's a direct one-to-one correlation between the sales in Pabrai Investment Funds and Dhandho Funds LLC, because Pabrai Investment Funds sold about 2.3 million shares, while Dhandho only added about 500,000 shares. But I'm curious, what's the link between these two funds, and why is Dhandho Funds investing in Shinoken? I'm not an expert on the Dhandho Funds entity, but if we do a quick Google search, we can go to dhandhofunds.com, and we hit this landing page that basically just seems to be a login portal for two of these funds, which are India's Zero Fee Fund and Junoon Zero Fee Funds. Now, I'm not even sure if either of these funds are still existing, and maybe this landing page is just a relic of something that Pabrai used to be working on, because I remember back in 2017, and I quickly searched this, the Junoon ETF was actually closed. Now, I don't know if this Junoon Zero Fee Funds is that same ETF or if it's a different fund using a similar name. But if we click these links, it looks like we're seeing a login and a request login here. And same thing with the Junoon Zero Fee Funds. So we can click on the About page maybe and look at the mission. Dhandho Funds is an investment firm founded by Pabrai. It applies the core investing principles to offer unique investment options that are smarter for the long-term investor. So it looks like they are suggesting to invest in low-cost index funds, save regularly, start early, and all the basic investment advice for the average investor. There's really not much information on this Dhandho Funds page or what Pabrai is actually doing within Dhandho Funds. One thing we can do is come over to the SEC website on Edgar and take a look at any of the filings that might be there for Dhandho Funds. So we can do a quick search for Dhandho, And there are a bunch of results that come up for the autofill. We have this ETF trust, which may be what I was talking about earlier with the Junun. They also have a Junun LP, Dhandho Holdings, a bunch of different entities here, but let's click on the Dhandho Funds LLC. Okay, it looks like the last filing was 2016, back in the end of August of 2016. All right, so this filing is not one I'm too familiar with, but it's in the matter of Dhandho ETF Trust and Dhandho Funds LLC. Maybe a summary of application. So the order, if granted, would permit the funds to issue their shares. So it looks like this is just their filing for when they actually wanted to start these funds. It doesn't provide too much information about the current entity. All right, let's keep looking. I did another Google for Dhandho Funds and came upon this investment advisor public disclosure database for Dhandho Funds LLC. These changes happened 2 days before that Shinoken filing was reported. The way I'm interpreting this chart down here is that it looks like Pabrai Funds withdrew their registration within California and set up their entity in Texas. Now, it could be a complete coincidence that this is happening at the same time that Dhandho Funds added to Shinoken. Uniform application for investment advisor registration and report by exempt reporting advisors. So Dhandho Funds LLC is looking to register as an investment advisor with the SEC, from what I can tell through this form. They've got all of Pabrai's information here. The website information, his YouTube channel, his blog. Okay, and it looks like this box right here is pretty important. They're looking to register for the exempt reporting advisor status, which basically means that they don't have to report to the SEC because they'll have assets under management of less than 150 million US dollars. So unfortunately, this right here, this request for exemption status, kind of takes the wind out of my sails a little bit about actually cloning this Dhandho Funds, because he's not going to have to report to the SEC any of his US holdings. However, we're already seeing a Japanese company show up in those filings, so I think that it is still worth keeping an eye on this Dhandho Funds entity to see what other companies, perhaps in Japan, India, South Korea, might show up in the portfolio. If I'm reading this correctly, it looks like the Dhandho Funds is registered in Japan with the Financial Services Agency, which makes sense. They own about 1% of Shinoken. I don't know what the regulations are. If every time they register with a foreign financial body, do they have to file another form like this? Not entirely sure, but we'll be keeping an eye out. I'll leave a link to this report in the description below. This is all public information filed with the SEC. And we could go on and on about this, but at the end of the day, it looks like they're registering this Dhandho Funds LLC as an investment advisor that does not have to report with the SEC. Well, that applies at least to the US holdings. We might not see, unless this fund grows to a large enough size, we might not see these SEC holdings reported. But in any case, we're probably going to see some foreign investments show up in this fund. So it's just one more place to look out for what Pabrai might be doing with his investments. If you have any information about this Dhandho Funds entity, I'd love to hear from you. Please leave me a comment below, or you can reach out to me on Twitter if you have any information. This could end up being nothing at all, but I'm definitely going to continue to track this Dhandho Funds LLC entity on ticker and see if any more companies come up, new or companies that are already owned by Pabrai. If you enjoyed this video, you might enjoy this video over here. Thank you so much for watching this all the way to the end. I really appreciate your time, and I will see you in the next video.